Hello and welcome to this week's YouTube video. Every month I do a Procreate tutorial where I transfer my fine art oil painting skills to Procreate and try to show you how to achieve that painterly style. This week I'm going to show you how I painted this Jack Russell Terrier with particular attention to that surface it was stood on. It was a frozen lake, so I'm dealing with reflections whilst trying to create painterly strokes. If I'm honest, it was actually quite hard, but I'll talk about that when I show you the video. Firstly, let me show you the sort of brushes that you would need to do this type of artwork. The main thing is every brush you use needs to make a different type of mark. You'll need some wet brushes, such as the turpentine brush, Procreate, the blend stump wax brush, bristle brush and fine wet liner, Tip Top brushes. I purchased the Pro Oil brush set from their website and a block-in brush like the wet acrylic Procreate. And also, ideally, something that gives you more of an impasto effect. I actually made this brush myself because I was struggling to find something that did what I wanted it to do. And to be honest, this was about as close as I could manage to get. It still doesn't give me the texture I'm after, but it does make the marks in a painterly textured way. This is a reference photo that I used for this piece. I really loved the way the terrier was looking at its own reflection, but I didn't like its stance, so I changed the back legs just to make them a bit more appealing. I also found the colour all a little boring, so my intention was to change that a little too. I added some orange to my photo just to give me an idea of the way I wanted to go with it. This then formed my reference photo, which I used for this piece. I disregarded the original photo. Let's now have a look at the time-lapse video and I'll talk about the process in more detail. The hardest thing about this piece was the water surface. I had to work very hard to get that effect. I used so many brushes, added so many layers, used loads of rubbers too. Honestly, achieving this effect is much easier with oil paint. The problem with Procreate is the brushes are very uniform. So when I add a stroke, basically the same mark is added in a variety of ways. The software does try to add an element of randomness to it, but it's nothing like painting. With oil painting, you have chaos, and the struggle is to try and control the chaos. So when I want my painting to reflect chaos, it's very easy and quick to get that. Here, I am trying to create chaos out of something that is naturally more uniform, so it is harder. This is why it takes ages to create the effect, and I had to use loads of brushes. So don't be deterred, just be prepared that you're going to have to work hard to create this effect. I've drawn my dog on a separate layer from my reference photo. This will be my top layer, just to keep my drawing correct. I've colour blocked in a blue and started creating a bit of water surface texture with a darker blue using the blend stump wax brush, but it's not enough to give me a rough enough surface, so I swapped to the turpentine brush to give me more of a textured effect. My paint is a bit transparent, perhaps 70% opacity. Notice how my brush strokes are both vertical and horizontal. Remember, we need to add a randomness to our water, so don't be uniform with your brush strokes. I then add a bit of warmth with an orange. Again, the paint I lay is transparent. I'm using the wet acrylic brush. Notice how my strokes are both vertical and horizontal. I then block in my terrier using average values, colours and temperatures. Notice at this stage there is no real detail in that dog. It's not important. It is more important to get that background working around the dog. I then start to figure out that water. I would love to give step-by-step instructions, but it really is add some strokes, then change your brush. Add some more strokes, then change your brush. The idea is to lay different textured marks next to each other and on top of each other. For example, the bristle brush next to the blend stump wax brush. This variety gives a more painterly effect. I'll break down my brush stroke process in as much detail as I can. I may start with a brush like the wet acrylic brush. My strokes are never fully opaque and I will be varying between high transparency, perhaps 20%, to less transparent, maybe 70%. I will lay both horizontal and vertical strokes. I will be pretty free and rigorous with my hand action. This will give me a more random effect. Remember, we want to create chaos. I'll then change my brush and also my colour. I want to keep my values largely the same in each area I work in. If I turn my photo into black and white, you'll see I have this darker area down here. The middle lightens a bit and then the top area is a bit lighter still. I need to make sure I keep my values the same in each area. How can I create randomness? The choice I have is to either change my colour, my temperature or my saturation. How do I decide what to change? I decide to use the complementary colour combination of orange and blue because my water is naturally blue due to the sky reflection. Remember, complementary colours are opposite each other on the colour wheel. They look amazing together and will always work. This bottom area here will be warmer, this middle area here will be cooler, and this top area will be warmer. I am therefore sandwiching blue in between orange. My choices are based on what I understand of colour theory. Because I have now decided this colour choice, how I create randomness is limited to narrow colour choices and temperature changes. I can pick either a saturated colour or a muted colour. If you look at your colour picker, this side is saturated, this side is muted. I also have the choice of colours around it. So, for example, look at the different hues of blue I can have. Look at the different hues of orange I can have too. So I'm not only changing my brushes every few strokes to make sure I have different marks, but I am changing my colours and my saturation to give me this kind of patchy effect where you can see different strokes showing through. I am also adding transparent orange over transparent blue to give me another different effect again. I've done it here at the top too. The important thing to understand is to be random with your brushwork and direction of your strokes, but I have been very deliberate with keeping my values the same and separating out my temperatures/colours. So orange, blue, orange. There is randomness with something much more ordered. Understanding colour theory will help you with this. I've taken this even further by starting lots of new layers and trying different effects on them. So for example, on this layer here, I have changed the layer effect to colour. On this layer here, I have changed the effect to exclusion. If you watch the video back closely, you'll see me scrolling through the effects on various layers, trying to create this randomness that I can get with oil paint so easily. Sometimes I'll scroll through every effect and not like any one of them, and so just continue adding brush marks. Sometimes I'll try an effect I like and leave it like I have on those two layers. It really is a case of try it and see how it looks. But always have in your head that you are trying to create something that looks random. So don't be afraid to be totally free with what you are doing and experiment. This is all I am doing. For the detail of the dog, I have used predominantly the bristle brush as it gives a good wiry fur effect. Again, I varied my transparency and the directions of my strokes, and I've also used some warm colours in the leg areas. These warm colours contrast really nicely against the cools of my blue. I've also done this in my shadows too by placing warm browns from my orange picker next to really cool saturated blues. Doing this really helps that reflection to pop. Notice the reflection in my reference photo is more detailed than I've suggested. Remember, the eye would not see like this. Choose your focal point, so here my dog, and make everything else more suggestive with looser strokes and less defined edges. Notice how I have not gone as light with my values in that reflection as it appears in the reference photo. When I look at that reference photo, my eye is drawn to that reflection because my values are too light, my edges too sharp. I want you to look at the dog. I have darkened the values slightly and softened my edges. I've kept my dog on separate layers to my water. As I put in the detail of my dog, I keep revisiting my water. It's just tweaks here and there. So I might decide to make my blue a little more saturated here and there. Or I might decide that I have too many of one type of brush mark in one area, so I change it up with some different strokes. I'm doing it and seeing how it looks. If I don't like it, I change it. It's a very experimental piece, and the most important thing is you mustn't be afraid to just go for it and try various things out. That's all I'm doing. I hope you've enjoyed today's video and found it useful. Please like and subscribe if you can, and check out my website sarahhallidayart.com, where you will find examples of my work and also details of online classes that I run. Thank you for watching, and see you for the next one.